Hi, I'm Allegra Edwards. I play Ingrid on Amazon Prime's Upload, and I'm here with Elias from the Man Cave Chronicles.
Welcome to another episode of the Man Cave Chronicles.
Welcome to the party, pal!
You're my boy, Blue!
Yo, Adrian!
A podcast with interviews of amazing guests from the world of pop culture.
Oh, yeah.
TV.
Nice.
Movies.
Oh, I love the movies.
Comedy and more. From deep inside the Man Cave, your host, Elias.
Allegra, welcome to the cave.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you? What's new with you?
Oh boy, I'm good. It's a loaded question. I'm good. I'm new with me. It is June, and I'm in Los Angeles officially now. I somehow managed to move out of my apartment in New York amidst all of this going on last week. So that was a feat in and of itself, and I'm officially an Angelino now.
Really? That's great. So how's like the whole quarantine treating you?
You know, it's had different phases. It's been mostly like I can't ultimately complain, you know. It's been different to like kind of chop it up into chapters. So the first chapter was at my parents' house in Massachusetts, and like it or not, when you're your parents' kid living in their house, you feel like a kid again. And sometimes that can be very frustrating, and sometimes it can be nice.
Yeah.
And then chapter two, I went to Los Angeles, and I'm now with my fiance.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so I'm doing okay now that I'm with him.
You mentioned Massachusetts. I'm from Massachusetts. What part are you from?
Well, so my parents live in Beverly, and my dad used to work at Gordon College, but they're actually about to move away themselves.
Okay.
So I didn't grow up there. It's just where they've worked for the last 5 years, but it's a beautiful area, and everybody I've met from Massachusetts has been very kind. So
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah. So you've been busy for a few years now in the acting world, and you recently just started on Amazon's Upload, which that show's amazing, by the way, and we'll talk about that. But let's start with where you originally from then.
Yeah, so I was born in California, but grew up all over the place. I lived in California, and then Virginia, Colorado. I lived in Hawaii for a couple years.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I would say that mostly Colorado is what I claim, but I don't know if I, identify as a Coloradan.
Yeah. Was this because of your parents' work, the job they had?
Yeah, my dad would get he'd get called to different areas, and he works in fundraising and consulting. So different organizations would require his skills, and then if he did his job right, they wouldn't need him anymore.
Mm.
So we would just, caravan, family style, move across the country.
That's awesome. But at least
Yeah.
you get to see, part of the country while you were young.
Oh yeah, and I gotta say, like, the big joke is that it feels like maybe he was in the military, because each of those states that I mentioned has a pretty strong military presence,
Yeah.
But no, that's not the case. It's not true. However, they are all really beautiful places to live, vastly different from each other, and as a result, I think it made me a little bit more adaptable at a younger age than I otherwise would have been.
Which one do you think was your favorite to live at?
Um, I really love Colorado. That's probably where I have the most memories. But I also really love Virginia too. Virginia was green and lush and so beautiful, and yeah, it would be a toss-up between those two.
Did you spend most of your time in Colorado out of all the places
Yeah,
you lived at?
yeah, I'd say. I mean, it's where I graduated from high school, so there's sometimes your memories are shaped most by where you were when you were a teenager or in middle school. So even if we were spending a lot of time in California, my memories there they're fuzzier, let's say,
Mhm.
than when I was in Colorado.
So how old were you when you kind of had an idea that you wanted to get into the acting world?
Young. I'm so young. Too young. No, I don't know. I think it started, I was really interested in going to theater productions as a little girl. My parents are both theatrically inclined. My dad was an actor for many years in the Bay Area, and as a result, I just even when I was 4 or 5, I was seeing full-on Broadway tours. I remember seeing Les Miserables, the musical, in the first or second row when I was probably too young to see it, given the content, some of
Yeah.
the content in the show. I remember this spit coming out of the actors' faces as they were singing and enunciating every single word, and just being enraptured as a 6 or 7 year old.
Wow.
So then from then on, I wanted to be in theater productions. I wanted to do commercials. I wanted to, dance and act and sing and do all the things.
What was like out of all those things you just listed, like what was like the main one that you really wanted to do?
You know, well, again, this is the theme, kind of
Yeah.
winning phases where ballet, like I wanted to be a ballerina for a little while. But then uh but then after seeing this is so random, but it was the Pirates of the Caribbean, the movie,
Yeah.
in high school. That was when I remember thinking for the first time what it must have been like when they made that movie. And that's when it shifted for me that, oh, television and film must be really fun, because you're immersed in the world that you're creating and not just, cardboard cutouts on a stage with a backdrop. Things are a little bit more two-dimensional when you're on stage. But when you're in film and TV, that was the first time it occurred to me that they were on an island and they were swinging from ropes and they were, actually in the Caribbean or wherever they were filming was a real environment. And that was like the peak of make believe. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
was like the farthest you could push your imagination. And suddenly that captured my attention.
Yeah. Were there like any other movies and TV shows that also pushed you more towards this?
Um, Great question. I mean, what did I watch on television when I was growing up? I was not I was not allowed to watch Friends, but I would sneaky watch Friends and try to get get away get away with watching it behind my parents' back. And that one definitely shaped me, just in terms of, okay, look at this, they're hysterical and this is going so fast. It's so fast paced and it looks like they're having a really good time. I think a lot of my choices surrounding uh, choosing this field is that it looks like people are having fun.
Yeah.
And that's a show where that certainly seemed to be the case.
Mm. So like you said, your parents, they acted and everything too. Like, but when you told them this is what you wanted to do, like, what was their reaction?
They were so down. They were so
Really?
excited. Yes, so on board. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it may have been discouraged, particularly for my dad. He was definitely told, like, okay, we'll help you with your college tuition if you major in economics. And that was the one stipulation that they had for him. He was miserable majoring in economics. He got C's across the board, but all of his electives in theater and history were
Right.
straight A's, flying
Yeah.
colors. He
Right.
like so I think that translated into being extraordinarily encouraging of me and my siblings as we pursued artistic endeavors. Because I'm sure there was a little hint of like, what if I had just jumped off the deep end and dived all the way in and saw how far I could take it. And I want my kids to know that I want them to try and try and try.
That's awesome.
So I know that it's not like that for everybody. And because of that, I'm really grateful to have had unending support from them. It's been really great.
So you said you mentioned that you went to school for pretty much theater and acting. Like how would you describe like your experience during that time?
Um, I was busy. I was a busy girl in undergrad. I tried to be involved in as many theatrical opportunities as I could. I was on scholarship at Pepperdine for theater and television. It was a combined major, so I had a little bit of the behind the scenes and then a lot of on stage experience too. And then I competed regionally in a scholarship competition I did variety shows. I did a ton of improv. I was really busy and I had a really good time.
Mm.
And then, but at the end of it, I still knew that I hadn't gotten a really thorough education. I had a lot of on stage experience, but I felt like I didn't know enough about the craft itself. And so I auditioned and applied for graduate school. And it was my time at ACT, the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, that really basically made me more of an artist and more conscious and consciously competent of what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are, and how to bring myself to a role, and how to read a script, and so many other skills. So ACT is really where it got much more specific.
So after college, like, how did you end up how did you end up in New York? Because you mentioned New York earlier.
Yeah, so after graduate school, I went to LA and had a really tough time auditioning. I was not happy, and I was submitting myself a lot for work. I was showing up for open calls and working minimum wage at a retail job part-time that I know was not paying my bills. Again, thank you, mom and dad. And yeah, basically I submitted myself for a play that went up in Pasadena, and then it was pretty successful. It was a really interesting, very cool play written by Sheila Callahan called Everything You Touch. And it got picked up to go do an off-Broadway run. And I was invited to come to New York to do an off-Broadway run with that particular play. And I always thought it was going to be a 4-month stay, but anybody that has lived in New York and has fallen in love with New York knows that she is a very captivating mistress, and it doesn't take long, or it doesn't take much to just be totally smitten with the city. And I didn't want to leave. So I moved across the country from LA to New York in 2015.
Oh, wow. So I mentioned earlier, like you've done a few, TV show appearances, everything before you started an upload. And I noticed you did like Modern Family, New Girl, to name a few. Like, what's been like your favorite before you started an upload?
Before upload, okay. Well, um, I let's upload is so different from all of those other ones because each of those roles were either a day player or like 2 days, maybe 3 days at the most, because they were guest star roles, right? And so I really loved doing Friends from College because it was a giant wedding scene that took place over the course of a couple days, and I was orange from head to toe. I had to learn choreography for that because part of the part of the episode required a bunch of inappropriate bridesmaids to do a very raunchy dance at the wedding that would make everybody uncomfortable. And so we had to meet beforehand and learn really raunchy, inappropriate choreography together, which was a great way to bond with castmates and just, it tapped into my musical theater roots again too. So that was a great experience. And then New Girl was also awesome. I mean, that was a very intimidating experience for me. It was my first guest star, and everybody was just very kind to me, and yeah, that was a fun one.
Amazon's upload. Did you have any idea it was going to be this huge?
No, no, and I think I'm still a little bit in denial about it. If I can be honest, I think it's funny. I feel like I open my phone and I can see through social media that people everywhere are loving it and watching it again and again. But when I put my phone away, it doesn't feel as real, because
Yeah.
my life hasn't changed that much other than a few 10,000 followers or something. But I always hoped that it would resonate with folks. I didn't think it would resonate this much, and I'm overjoyed. I think it's like just reading the initial script, I was excited about it. I thought it was fresh and funny and honest, but also just tongue in cheek, all my favorite things in one script. And I love that everybody else is like, into it.
Mm.
It makes me feel like they get it.
Yeah. I mean, like I had Kevin Bigley on the show, and I mentioned to him, like, like it got released like on a Friday, and next thing you know, it's like less than 48 hours, it got renewed right away for like season 2.
It was, yeah, it was, I mean, it was a little bit more than 48 hours, but it was
That's
less
what it
than a
felt like.
week. Yeah, that is, I mean, it really did. It felt that way to us too. And I think, especially because, as I'm sure he told you, and I'm sure you've probably seen, it took forever to make it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
he, from casting to release was what, 2.5 years is like, or 2 years is a long time to wait for something that you've been excited about.
Mm.
And so I keep saying that it feels like I've got this secret that's been burning a hole in my back pocket, and now I can finally take it out and release all of it and enjoy it with everyone else.
So like when you first heard about the project, like what drew you in when you first read the script?
Oh, so much. I think one of the things that I really loved was that the world was not overly explained, if that makes sense. I knew that it took place in the year 2033, but sometimes I find with too much exposition, or this is why this is the way that it is, or this is how people spend their time now in the future because XYZ, it just drops you right in it and expects you to catch up. So I think it hopes that its audience is smart and keeping up with it, which they do. Everybody, gladly accepts the world building, which I think is so cool. It also made me laugh out loud just reading some of the dialogue between the characters, just in a very basic way. That's hard to accomplish when you receive so many scripts of every pilot season. Sometimes I can see the joke coming, and it already feels stale. But this script took me by surprise so many times, just in the pilot alone, that I was laughing out loud.
So was this a self-tape or a live audition when you went in there?
It was a self-tape, and it wasn't.
Really?
Yes, it was a self-tape out in New York. This is insane to me. I still can't get over this. I did 2 scenes from the pilot. The scene at Thanksgiving dinner, trying what became ambrosia salad, but in the audition side, it was a sort of a spicy Moroccan dish or something. And then the second scene is the FaceTime call, where I'm FaceTiming Nathan at Lakeview, and I submitted it. And then a couple days later, I heard back, okay, the director would like to see the second scene another time. He knows that you get the comedy, but he wants it more grounded. And I had so little time to do it. I had to ask my friend to help me tape it again at like 7:30 or 8 in the morning, which is so early. I brought her bagels because I felt bad. And we had to turn it around, and I sent it back in. And then later, maybe a couple weeks later, I found out from my reps, they called me and said, "Do you know why we're calling?" And I said, "I'm hoping it's for a callback or a producer's session or a director's session."
Yeah.
And they said, "It is about upload, but they're just offering you the role. And they need you to get on a plane in 48 hours to go to the costume fitting and the table read."
Wow.
Now, I didn't meet the casting director. I didn't meet Greg. I didn't meet Robbie. I mean, I didn't chemistry test with anybody. They just did it from that second tape. That's it.
Wow.
Which
Crazy.
changed my life. Yeah.
So you play Ingrid. Like, how would you describe her if somebody came up to you and said, "Describe me her"?
Yeah. So Ingrid is Nathan's girlfriend, and she is, you could say that she's a bit of a type A personality. I'd say type A on steroids. She likes to be in control of most situations. She is very image focused. She cares about her appearance and what everything looks like. She and Nathan actually do have a very similar kind of sense of humor. They get each other to a degree, but there's some self-centeredness and a lack of self-awareness that Ingrid has that starts to separate her from Nathan a little bit, among many other things, like a long-distance relationship.
Yeah, and it's funny because like me and my wife binged this show like in pretty much Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're done with it. It's like, we're watching each character, and like yours, like, and we don't even know like what your intentions of your character is either throughout the season.
Yeah, yeah. It's that's what's fun about it, right? Is that
Yeah.
and even in the making of it, I was sort of unsure about where it was going to go. I had a couple instances where Greg Daniels pulled me aside and said, "Hey, FYI, FYI," and I went, "Oh, okay, okay," but I still wasn't 100% positive. I didn't know the ending was coming. That was a total shock to me. And so yeah, it's really fun to watch it and go, look at what they're piecing together, what breadcrumbs they're dropping along the way.
Mm,
And I think it's important that you're not sure about Ingrid. I think she should go from being number one suspect to, but wait a minute, if she's a terrible, terrible person, then why wouldn't Nathan dump her
right.
after month two? You know, like they'd be done, be a one night stand. So there's got to be something to her that makes it difficult to just leave the situation, you know?
What do you think was like the biggest challenge of like playing this character?
Um, oof. I think, it's funny. My background, like I said, is in theater, and if anything, there were choices that I would make that were a little bit too funny and soft, a
Yeah.
little too if anything, I was making her my instinct was to go a little bit too likable, or a little bit too slapstick, or a little bit too goofball, which is more Allegra than Ingrid. Um, and I'm grateful that we had these talented directors that came in, and also our amazing editor David Rogers, who's superb, that could, like, that's what's so fun about television, is they can pick and choose from the spectrum of choices that you give them, and then use that to create what the final product is. I know what's on the cutting room floor, but nobody else does.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm excited for a second season to, like, okay, now I know what they chose, and I know the lane that I should sort of stay in. But that doesn't mean that there were opportunities for me to kind of color outside the lines a little bit.
Mm. So like, the show's like, there's comedy, but there's also some, scenes that gets not darker, but a little more drama. Like, how do you tackle between, like, how do you balance that between comedy
Well,
and drama?
I think that I think the thing that really helps is remembering that laughter, when you're with an audience, we laugh out of recognition, right? And so either, oh, that resonates with me because I've seen that, or I know that person, or it's funny because it's true. Like, all of that is what triggers authentic laughter. And so in life, you can have comedy and drama side by side, sometimes in the same sentence, where I will hear something and then I'll trip and fall, and I'm laughing and crying at the same time. There's an authenticity to having those two things side by side. So if you're not playing the comedy, but rather just playing the truth of what the characters are experiencing and thinking, and then just trust that the writing will do the work for you, then you can release having to find the right balance between the drama and the comedy. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
A little
definitely.
bit.
Yeah. So like, for your character, is there anything that you would change about her, and what would you like to see happen to your character for like season 2, if you had an idea?
Oh man. I mean, I'd love to have another scene with Ingrid's family. I think there's some opportunity there. I'd love to know what her relationship is with her sister. I'd love to know what her actual relationship is like with Jamie, Nathan's best friend,
Yeah.
because we know that there's something juicy going on there. I'm curious about that. I am so excited at the prospect of spending time with an angel that has to take care of me, potentially, in Lakeview. I don't know if that's a direction that they're going to go, but I think it would be fun to work with Zainab. Zainab and I never got to do a scene together. And I would love to work with her. I'd love to like butt heads with Luke, and because Kevin is just hysterical, and he would be a treat to work with too. A lot. I want Ingrid to
Right.
do everything. I
That's
want it
right.
all. Very greedy.
So how would you describe like the chemistry like with you and Robbie? Because you guys had a
Mhm.
lot of scenes together.
Yeah, we did and we didn't though. I mean, it's funny. It's like I said earlier, there is something between them that they recognize. You know,
Yeah.
they are both shallow. And while Nathan is kind of starting to grow and mature, um, Ingrid is maybe a few crossbacks, behind on the trail, as it were. Um, so I think that the chemistry is definitely um, physically based for the characters. But the thing that helps with Robbie, the actor, and with me is that he's a really smart guy. He's really smart. He's very genuine. He's very funny. Um, and so even if they're shallow, that doesn't mean they're dummies. And
Yeah.
so the chemistry can be helped along by this sort of intelligent back and forth, which is what they have. I mean, that's definitely written in for the characters.
Mm. Do you have like a favorite episode or scene that sticks out the most for you?
um, I I have a special spot in my heart for the sleepover episode. Um, I love the scene where he FaceTimes her and she's in her office and he just wants to see where she works. And she says it's just the office. And I'm talking about Nora and Nathan. I should
Yeah.
clarify who I'm talking about. Nathan FaceTimes Nora at her office and she gives him a little virtual tour and she's sort of shrugging it off like it's nothing and he goes, no, it's real, it's life, it's earth, it's home. And then she finds herself, she transports herself into Lakeview and they look at the stars together and I'm wearing my ridiculous wig and trying to bond with Nathan's niece in an effort to endear myself to both him and the little girl. And there's just a lot in that episode that is very sweet and heartbreaking and complicated,
Yeah.
so that's what stands out to me first.
You have a scene that was like really difficult to shoot out of all those episodes?
um well, so yeah, the the scene that was the hardest for me to shoot was probably the sex suit scene when I'm in the actual suit,
Yeah.
because it was so it's a unitard underneath and then pieces of foam sticking to me with Velcro and then a scuba suit over it and then like a swim cap type thing on top of that and then goggles and then I'm in a bathtub and they're giving me directions and the camera is right over me, but I couldn't hear and I also couldn't see. So it's a really funny scene. I love how it came out. I think it's ridiculous and I would love to do more of that kind of thing if I can. But the the auditory element was very difficult.
Mm.
And then yeah.
How long did it take you to get into that suit? I gotta know.
It took a long time. It took a while because the foam needed to stay stuck to me as they were putting it on.
Yeah.
So I was hanging out in my unitard for a little bit, but then they and if the Velcro wasn't working, they had to like use duct tape and get it to stay. And I really looked like some sort of, I don't know, claymation action figure. It was very weird, very weird.
So aside from Ingrid, what would you say is the most interesting character on the show that
Mm.
you liked?
Ah, um, well, there's a few. I really love Cousin Fran. I'm a Cousin Fran fan, stan for Fran. Um, Played by Elizabeth Bowen, who is a wonderful improviser and comedian and actress, and uh, she's terrific. And then another one that I would love to see more of. This is so specific. He's just referred to as the snotty professor. And he's the guy that is reading a newspaper when they're singing the Uptown Funk song, and he says, "Well, can see you've made yourself right at home or whatever. And then he gets up and walks away with the
That's
newspaper
right,
under his
yeah.
arm. And he, for some reason, he loves the Easter egg hunt or the egg hunt at the holiday party. And it's like, he's just so specific. And I don't know why, but I laugh every single time I see him show up.
So if this could be real, like the whole upload thing, would you do it?
Oh, question of the
And,
year.
and I'm sure you've been asked this a million times.
Yeah, I think, oh man, if I could have like a 6-month free trial, I'd love to check it out and explore and see what it would be like for a little bit. I think the idea of eternity, in a corporate run environment that's not perfect and is just sort of a facade of real life, I think it would be agonizing. It would be really rough. And I would also, it would be difficult if my friends and family couldn't be at the same
Right.
afterlife as me. I think that would be really challenging.
So out of like all those like little gadgets they had back, 20, what's the year again when it takes place? We said
2033.
2033 is like, is there any like certain gadget that you hope to see someday?
Yeah, I mean, I think sharpened shoulder blades as a beauty treatment. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to see that.
Or the bees?
Nobody needs no bees. Although
Yeah.
I think bee sting facials are happening here and there, which is terrifying. But no, the piece of technology that I really love is actually in Lakeview. So it's sort of, a couple steps removed from something that could actually be here tomorrow. But it's the memory parlor scene. Do you remember this? Where they get to play back their memories and watch them.
Yes.
And it's sort of a beauty parlor environment, but there's something about that I think is very sweet. And it reminds me a little bit of the film Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep, which is a wonderful comedy from decades ago. But I like the idea of being able to relive the memories that you didn't realize as you were making them that you would want to remember them, and if I could drop myself into a handful of memories, I would do it in a heartbeat.
That's great. So have they said anything to you about when they think season 2 will start filming?
Yeah, it's pretty up in the air. I think there were hopes for late summer. As of right now, it's based on Canada and their restrictions, not just in the film industry, but also work permits and the fact that most of the main cast is US based. And so it's complicated.
Yeah.
I would love for it to be sooner rather than later, obviously for lots of reasons, but we also want to do it safely and make sure that everybody's taken care of, and we're taking everything into consideration. So maybe the fall, we'll see.
Yeah. So you mentioned this was a self-tape. Like, what do you enjoy? Do you enjoy more self-tape or auditioning in front of people?
At this point, I tend to have more confidence in a self-tape environment, just because I feel like I know myself better. I psych myself out when I'm in a waiting room with other actors. I start to second guess my choices, and I can get a little bit nervous. It's really awesome in a in-person audition to be able to receive feedback immediately from the casting director, and they can coach you on some things that they'd like to see differently, which you don't get to do in a self-tape. But I've booked 8 different roles off of self-tape auditions where I didn't meet a single person face to face until I arrived on set. So that's definitely the way for me for now.
Yeah, you got to ride the hot hand, right?
gotta do it. Gotta use what works. Exactly.
Is there somebody that you would like to work with someday?
Yes. I've got a little list. I would love to just observe Jodie Comer from Killing Eve. I think she is masterful and such a great technician, and I'm just jealous of her ability. So I would want to work with her just to watch her. And then kind of like opposite end of the spectrum is I I'm a big mush, and I've enjoyed This Is Us so much, and particularly the work of Sterling K. Brown. if he, I mean, I'd love to just meet him, but I think he's also a terrific actor, and from what I've heard, just a really genuine soul. So that's another one. I'd love to work with Lisa Kudrow, Allison Janney, Laura Dern. I've got this, like, these
It's a
tall
good list.
tall women in comedy I've been dying to meet and just swap stories. And these are also women that, no matter their age, they're still doing incredible roles that are complicated and interesting and diverse in and of themselves. And I mean, Allison Janney, like, who can get nominated in so many different categories in 1 year?
Right.
Like, she's just and do musicals too. She's just epic.
So do you have any other like projects that you've done that are ready to come out that you could tell the listeners?
Yeah, there's a couple things they could check out. I just finished working on Briarpatch, which was on USA Network, and I loved working on that show. I loved everything about that show. I'm pretty sure it's still available to stream on the USA app and on demand, I'm pretty sure. And then you could also check out The Social Ones, which is a film that's a little bit of a mockumentary style, not unlike a Christopher Guest type comedy, all about social influencers. And that is available on Amazon and on Apple on demand as well.
That's awesome. Allegra, how can the listeners find you on social media?
Sure. So my handle on Instagram is @arosebyname. And then on Twitter, I'm Allegra_Edwards.
All right, Allegra, thank you for coming on. This is fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap, everybody. That's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to the Man Cave Chronicles podcast.
I finally get my man cave.
You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @the MCC Podcast and our website, themccpodcast.com. Until next time.